Okay, so welcome. I haven't done a tutorial in a while, but I thought I'd share a pretty amazing way to get edge wear on your models. This is a trick that, to me, saves quite a bit of time and is actually really, really cool. So your end result, right now I have Substance Painter open. Your end result will look something like this here after we're done. It might not look exactly like it, but it'll be pretty close. We also have a couple other versions of the same model with different materials on them. So we have here's more of a painted metal and kind of a wood. And you can see why this edge wear will kind of take any real plain cube and turn it into give you some edge wear around it. Now, a lot of times people would use ZBrush and they would go around and they would wear down these different edges. Now, that's a great way to do it. But this way is incredibly fast and incredibly easy. So I want to show that to you today. So the programs we're going to use, and that's going to be like the kicker. We need the Substance Suite. You can, if you want to, paint your materials a different way, you don't necessarily need this software to do this, but there are a couple necessary pieces of software, and one is 3ds Max, and this is 2026. You can actually get it pretty reasonably priced now. I think it was $300 for a year, which really breaks down to like, and just understand, I am not in bed with any of these companies. This is just what I've found to use that work for me. But the plugin I use for this works in 3D Studio Max, so that's why you would want that software. The plugin is this PolyDamage one, plugin for 3D Studio Max. I know, $50. This is where it comes. It's not easy when you start doing it, but like the more money you spend, the easier it gets, and the faster you can pump out content, and the faster you can build models. I've made so many really wonderful looking models, at least in my opinion, with this software right here. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to, like, in what's new in 1.5 is these chips here. That really helps. Those chips kind of chip into stuff. So I'm going to show you right now. I know the price for all of this stuff is daunting. I know the Substance stuff costs monthly fee. I know that this is $50, and then max for a year is about $300. But I want to show you the results and show you why this is fast and why it's so neat. So why don't we just open up 3D Studio Max, and I'm gonna let's make a box quick. Box. Okay, just real simple. Let's put it at 0, 0, 0 just so that we can stay consistent. Convert to an editable poly. Now this tutorial is going to, assume you have some basic knowledge of stuff. I will show you what I'm doing, but I'm not going to go really slow through everything. Hopefully you can follow along. If you need to pause, just go ahead and pause. So when you download the plugin and install it, it'll have instructions on how to install it. Then I like to set a hotkey up for it. So if you go to customize right here, and then you go to hotkey editor, and once you follow the instructions on how to install it, and once you have it installed, you can search it out by putting in poly with a D, and then you have PolyDamage version 1, and you see the hotkey is Control plus D. That's what I set. Just find one that you don't use all the time for something else. So I'll hit the Control plus D and bring up the PolyDamage rollout here, and you can see here's all the settings. The first one you want to make sure you stick on is add chips. That will add some like extra little details around and chip out some of the corners a little bit better, but that's it. Now we're basically ready to add the damage to our model. So you see we just have a plain box here, and I'll just hit apply damage here, and boom, done. Now you already have a model with edge wear on it. Now this doesn't particularly, you know, maybe you wouldn't use this in particular for your end model, but that's so fast that, you know, you could spend a bunch of time. Oh, maybe you're in ZBrush and you're sculpting out these little edges, and then you're like, oh, well, when you get to the end, you're like, oh man, I made them too thick, I made them too thin, I didn't do this, I didn't do that, now I got to do it over. Now I know you could be pretty fast with that, but can you be this fast? Because every time you hit it, it'll do a new seed. So you can go bonk, 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 and there you go, with a new variation. And you can already start to tell the different things you can do. Make bricks, you can make blocks, you can make metal strips with wear on the edges, you can make wood, you can do all sorts of neat stuff. So like, let me just kind of go through. I want to do this relatively quickly. So right here, this is the resolution. This is going to be how poly heavy your model is. So let's, I don't know, let's up that to like 64 and hit apply and see what the change is like. So now you can see everything's tightened up. It looks a little bit nicer, honestly. This edge relax, this edge relax, the second option here, this will round off the edges more, the higher the value. So if you go 2 and apply, here, well, I gotta have it selected. 2 and apply, you see now we have more rounded edges around, and you can kind of go crazy with it even, really. So we go like 5, and then boom. And then yeah, you could make it even rounder, really neat. So this would be your end result high poly model that we're gonna bake onto a low poly model, right? So the edge push is the opposite way. It kind of pushes out towards the edges. So like if I increase this, I'll show you. We'll just add 1 PolyDamage and see how it pushed out towards the edges. Let's try to find some settings. Noise scale is how small or large the noise map is that they're using to do the damage. And you can play with the strength and the roughness until you get something you like. Right now, what I'm going to do is just try to find some values that that'll work. Maybe like 1.7. Let's try that. That's okay. Let's just do a couple of random deals. Let's drop this down back to 0.5. I think for now, that's probably okay. I'm not gonna sit here and do this forever, but like that's kind of the speed of it. You could take the random seed, tick off, and then change all these values to just this in this version in particular, the way it arranges the noise maps. But you can just keep on clicking if you don't like it. So this one is the one we're going to use. So we're going to name this one box high. And let's duplicate this so I can make the low poly version. And I'll call this box low. Okay, so obviously we'll just delete this PolyDamage modifier on it. Now it just turns it back into our regular box. Now this is not a modeling tutorial really, or a UVing tutorial, but I will be doing some of that. Let's close the PolyDamage. We don't need that anymore. And then here's our low poly box. I'm going to select the whole thing, and then we're going to smooth it all to like one smoothing group. So clear all, boom, 1. So now you can see like the lighting's all goofy, but that's because it's trying to light each individual triangle depending on where the vertex is, and it's trying to smooth the whole thing. So we're going to add a few faces into that, but we'll do that after I unwrap it. So first we'll unwrap it. We'll add an unwrap modifier. And there you go. And then we'll go here, mapping, flat mapping, and then just leave all the settings the same. Select the front one here. I'm going to rotate it just so it's like oriented with the box itself. Then I'm going to stitch these other faces to it. So we'll select an edge, stitch, 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 and then we got the top, stitch, and then the bottom here, stitch. Now, of course, this is not the best way to UV this. I'm just UVing it quick so I can show you the whole process how to add this edge wear to the model. So let's just shrink her down. Actually, why don't we test it out and make sure that, you know, we're not getting any stretching. I'll put the checker on right here, up in the right corner. Let's up this. And now you can look at the squares. And you'll see, like, if as long as they are squares, should be good. So now we'll just reshrink this. Put her in the 0 to 1 texture space. And like I said, I'm not going crazy with UVs or anything, so I'm going to call that good. And then we'll collapse this. So now it's UV'd low polygon model. Let's unhide everything else. We have our high and our low. Let's change our low color just so we don't get confused. I don't know, something different. There you go. Now let's add some edge loops. So we'll select our edges here. Go to the modeling up in the ribbon. And we have Swift Loop. Swift Loop, wonderful tool. Maybe I'll make a video on that at some point too. But now see, the high poly model has some kind of like bevel here around it. So we want to kind of be kind of similar to that. So we're going to just make some Swift loops. We'll go like bonk. It looks good. Bonk. Bonk. And I like doing this by hand instead of like doing a inset or chamfer or whatever. I like doing it by hand because it keeps a little bit of the randomness to it. So another one, boom, and another one, boom, and one down here, boom. Let's make sure all the corners are covered. I'm going to turn the grid off quick. All the corners seem to be covered. All right, let's see what that looks like. That looks reasonable. Okay. So that's what we're going to work with. Now, what you could do from here is add some more faces and then conform it more to this, the high poly mesh. And you could do that with the free form. So like you'd put the high poly mesh here, you have these overlapping each other, and then you can run around and make sure every vert from this one lines up with this. I'm not going to do that here, and there's more in-depth tutorials about that, but we're just going to kind of roll with it from here as just for speed's sake, as far as like showing you the end result. So now here's our low, here's our high, right? So we're going to save thousands of polygons. If we wanted to look, we could go to viewport configuration, statistics, total, apply, okay. So that didn't work. So statistics, show statistics in active viewport, apply, okay. So now this one, 39,000 polys, 54,000 tries. This one, 54 polys, 108 tries. So that's pretty cool, right? So now we're going to move our low poly into the same position as our high poly, and then we're going to export both of these. Let's collapse this down. File, export, export selected. All right, I gotta navigate to where I want it. Let's go YouTube, Edgeware tutorial. Let's just do it in there. And this one will be box. Do SM for static mesh. Good to have a naming convention that you always kind of stick with. Box, and then high. Save. All right. And then this one. File, export selected. SM box. We're going to call this SM box low. All right. and export that one. Now that we have that all completed, we don't really need Max anymore, or we shouldn't, hopefully. Otherwise, I'll have to start the video over. Now we're gonna go to Substance Painter, and here we are. Let's do a new file, and let's select our file, SM Box Low. That was a different one, so we're gonna go to the tutorial. SM Box Low. That's for the one we just made. 2048 document resolution, normal map format, DirectX. That's what I do. You don't have to do that. And then we'll just hit OK, and we'll discard this other one. And here's our box. And you go, oh, okay, wow, isn't that amazing? Nope, not yet. So first of all, we want to bake the high poly mesh onto the low poly mesh, right? So let's go to Mode, Bake Mesh Maps. All right, and then we will select, right here you see this little thing here, select SM Box High. Okay, and now it'll put a bounding box around our deal, and you want to kind of rotate around it just to make sure you don't see any red. That means that like something's outside the bounding box, and if it is, you can change these max frontal distances and rear distances to try to get everything within the box so you get a better bake. Everything else is set correctly, so we'll roll down here. You can see the bakers I'm doing. I have them ticked here. If you want different ones, you can tick more of them. We're going to put on anti-aliasing. I'm going to do that to 16 times, and then we're going to go bake selected textures, and it'll run through and bake them all. Depending on the speed of your computer, that could take a little while. So like if you have a slower computer, what you could do is bake it first without doing anti-aliasing. It'll go a lot faster. But if you have a faster computer, it shouldn't be a problem. So here we go. So now we return to painting mode and see the result. And now you see how it changed that simple box into basically our baked on normal high poly mesh onto low poly mesh, which is pretty impressive. Now you'll see it's pretty sharp still, which sometimes you're trying to do. Sometimes it looks better to keep it nice and sharp. Sometimes it doesn't, and that's when I said if you add more polys to your low poly mesh, and then if you add more polys to it and then you conform it to the high poly mesh like I was showing you in Max, then you can get it to line up better, and then it'll look more beveled. But sometimes it'll look a little bit too rounded, so it's nice sometimes to keep this hard edge. But remember, if you do that in Max, I'll go back real quick. If you do it in Max and you change something on your low poly mesh, like say you decide to move around your edges, like say you do that, you know, you're gonna need to fix your UVs. So you'll go back in, unwrap, open your UV editor, and you'll see if you look at these edges here, see how there's still this just small gap for that really big UV space. So then what you would want to do is come back in, like select all your faces and tools, and then relax it somehow. Like you can do it with Unfold, Optimize 3D, Polygon, or Edge Angles. I would probably just do it with Unfold and just hit that and see how it spread out that face. And then you can check the checker just to make sure it's right. Scale everything up, make sure you have squares, and then you're good. So I guess I wanted to just go flip back to that just in case you wanted to make your model a little bit more, more detailed, or so it didn't look so square and everything. So now let's show you. So now that we have this, that's basically what we've got. I'm gonna end up showing you how to put some materials on this pretty quick. Again, this isn't like a substance tutorial or anything, but like, we're gonna still show you how to set it up with some materials. So let's see, what do we want to start with? Let's just start with the like steel painted. So I think that there's this green steel painted. So basically all you have to do is throw, this is one of the smart materials. So you can just throw that right on and boom, done. It's like, wow, now you already have kind of rusty edges. And if you want to add a little bit more, you can go to these masks here and the smart masks, and you can find a cool things to add. So like, let's say, let's do this stained scratches one. That'll probably look really cool. And boom, yeah, that looks nice. And then maybe, you know, dump the opacity down so it's not quite so overpowering, but then you can kind of, so that's a really nice painted metal. So now you can see how you can have like a worn metally painted plates that have this kind of edge wear that's really neat. So let's get rid of that. Let's do another one. Let's try to do wood. Show you what this would look like with wood. So let's try wood. Let's do wood beech. That always looks good. I mean, I would show you my own smart materials, but then it gets into like, well, then how did you make that? So we're just going to kind of roll with the ones that are included in the program. So we'll do this wood beech here, and you can see already it's pretty. It's nice that it has those edges that are kind of like, you know, worn down, as opposed to if this was just a straight up box. So let's do do dirt cavities. Probably that would probably look good in the cavity areas. Let's do that. Okay, yeah, so there's white. Let's change the color of that to a darker, I don't know, some sort of brown. And then get the roughness, turn the roughness up, and then knock the opacity down. And there you go. That looks pretty good. You can also look at it in the, over here, in the flat view. It gives you kind of an idea. Once you get a feel for it, you'll understand what it'll look like better in engines. Let's add, let's do something with the edges too, just to kind of add a little dust around the edges so they kind of pop a little bit more. Okay, that looks okay. Obviously it's way overblown, but we'll fix that. Let's do, first we'll change the color a little bit, maybe more of a, yeah, that's looking cool. Let's just drop the opacity down just a touch, just to kind of, now you can kind of see how nice that look, as far as like, now you can make boards with this. So with just this really simple process, where before you'd have to sit there and sculpt and hope it looked good, and now you can just hit that randomize button on that PolyDamage, and it's really neat. So let's just dump this down a little bit more. I don't like how dark it is, but then this is kind of like the end result with stuff built in, and you have tons of other different filters and things you can add. This one I probably need to change the roughness, which will make me have to change the, yeah, we'll up that so you don't really have it to be that shiny. Then we'll up this a little bit, and there you go. We're gonna call that the wood. I'm not even gonna save this. So let's get rid of all of this, and let's do one last one. So we're gonna try to do some like a rock thing, and unfortunately there's not a lot of really good pre-built rock stuff that at least in my opinion, in Substance, but you can kind of play around with things and get a look that you want. So one of the ones that I've found that works is this clay terracotta material here. So we'll grab that and pop that on, right? Now, one thing we want to do probably with this is we want to change the UV projection, I'm guessing, because you can see there's a seam there. Yeah. And the UV, if we can do triplanar mapping with this, it will actually improve it quite a bit. It won't fix it 100%, but it'll do, in my opinion, it'll do it good enough that you can get away with it until you're like 100% know you're done, and then you can go through and kind of tidy up your seams. So it'll go to triplanar, but what that does is it'll put a triplanar box around it, and right now we want to change that tiling because that doesn't look very good. So we'll drop that to like, I don't know, I'll probably enter a value here since the slider was working funny, like 5. Yeah, 5 looked good. And then we'll move the triplanar box around a little bit. See if we can come up with a neat, where it kind of like does these edges nice. Okay, so that looks pretty good. We'll stick with that. Like I said, this isn't a super in-depth tutorial about how to use Painter or anything. This is just showing you how to do the edge wear. Now let's change the color so it's not red. Let's do a blue. Like a, yeah. Like maybe a, yeah, now we're getting there. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Like a good mix between like that terracotta, whatever that is, beige, and the reddish color, and now we have the nice blue. I think that's nice. Okay, let's continue on. So now we have that, and then we'll go back to our masks again. And let's do some edges. We want to get some edges on here, and we want to do the same thing with the cavities. So what edges do we want to do? Here's edges strong. Yeah, let's do that one. Okay, yeah, you can see that one's pretty cool. But we're going to have to adjust a few things about it. So we'll go to the mask part of it here. And we have global balance. Let's just kind of mess around with that a little bit. Okay, yeah, it added a little bit in there, and I want to blur it just a tiny bit, like, yeah, something like that. You can mess with the contrast a little bit, and you can get a good, now I'm not going to obviously keep it this strong and that color, but like this is the general, the beginning, right? So like then we can go to the color of this, and we can change it to, let's make it like a little bit reddish, honestly. That'll probably look nice. Okay. And then we'll drop down the opacity until it looks like it's starting to blend in and be the right. That's a little bit pink, maybe a little bit. No, I want it a little bit red. Okay, that's a tiny bit red. There, do that. Go up. So there you go. Now you can see the edge wear on there as it goes around. So like I showed you before, you can do the metal, you can do the wood. We'll do one more thing here, and you can play with all of these different smart filters here. There's the smart masks. It's really fun. I mean, they can do a lot of things. Once you've baked all your mesh maps, these smart masks revolve around, like they work on based on those mesh maps that you baked. So you're going to get better results when you bake a high poly onto a low polygon mesh. So what were we going to do? I can't remember. Dirt cavities. Okay, we'll do that. Just quick. We'll just add a little bit of extra flare. We can go down, and then you can make it whatever color you want. Like say we wanted a little bit of a, I don't know, more of a bluey color for the cavity. It's more of like an occlusion kind of effect that we don't want to really overblow, but we can drop it down, and now you can see like how it kind of helps. We have to change roughness. You don't want it to be shiny. I don't know if I changed the roughness on this one either. No, you don't want that to be shiny either. So the black is smooth, white is rough. So you just kind of, okay, so this is going to be stone, so this is going to be pretty rough. There might be a little bit of smoothness to the corner. So there you go. I have no idea like how fast this video was. My goal was that it was going to be pretty quick. And and it's kind of exciting to me to go over this stuff. And this is one of my first videos in a long time, so I really appreciate you watching and maybe following along. And I do apologize if some of it seems a little rushed or fast, but I did want to get this information out there. I feel like it would save a ton of time with having to sculpt, using ZBrush. Like, I mean, ZBrush is the way to do it, but like, man, you can make some pretty quick, pretty neat, you can do varieties of different seeds. You can change the way the edges look. You can change the resolutions. It's really neat. And if you do a lot of testing around with it, you'll see just how quick and powerful it is. So I want to say thank you again. Thanks a lot for watching. My website is www.lostdaygames.com if you want to check out, like, if you're like, who's this joker who's trying to tell us how to do anything. If you want to look at some of my work over the years, I've been modeling for quite a few years, and I just wanted to say thank you, and I appreciate it, and I hope you have a great rest of the day. Thanks a lot.